journalist specializing in a wide range of unsolved mysteries, including Bigfoot. He's the author of 64 books on UFOs, lake monsters, zombies, Bigfoot, including the Roswell UFO controversy, Men in Black, 365 Days of UFOs. Nick has appeared in many TV shows, including the BBC Out of This World, the Sci-Fi Channel's Truth Positive, the History Channel's Monster Quest, America's Book of Secrets for UFO Hunters, and is the National Geographic Channel's Paranaturalist. Nick lives in Arlington.
Well, what I'm going to talk to you about today, everybody, is the goat, not just the goatman of Texas, but the goatmen of Texas. Because a lot of people don't realise that there actually are several Texas legends that concern goatmen. Now, I'll give you a little bit of background as to how I got interested in all of this. And, as you can probably tell, I have a bit of an unusual accent. I'm originally from England, but I live in Arlington. I've been here about 20 years or so. But when I was about 4 or 5 years old, my parents took me on a vacation to Scotland, and while we were there, we spent a day at Loch Ness. And of course, if you're going to go to Loch Ness, you have to keep a lookout for the Loch Ness Monster, or the Loch Ness Monsters. And although I was only sort of very young age at that time, I said 4 or 5, I still have a few vague memories of my dad telling me the story of the Loch Ness Monster. And so when you're that kind of age, you know, you're standing on the shore of this huge lake and thinking, wow, you know, there could be monsters or strange animals living deep in the loch. It really sort of fired my excitement, and when I finished school I went into journalism, and then thought after a few years of doing that, why not combine the interest in things like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster and Chupacabra, and combine it into taking like a journalistic approach to investigating these things. So that's basically what I do. I sort of investigate strange mysteries like the Goatman, but to try and approach it with the same approach that a journalist on a local newspaper would also approach it. You go out looking for witnesses, corroborative information, and to try and build up together a story or a coherent scenario to try and understand and explain what's going on. And so that's what I've done with the Goatman stories, is to look at them and see, you know, are they true, are they legend, is it friend of a friend stories, or is it literally 100% true? So what I'm going to do for you is sort of tell you or share with you the information that we have that relates to these Goatmen stories, starting with the most famous one of all, certainly the Goatman of Lake Worth. Now, just to give you some background, the study of unknown animals like the Goatman is called cryptozoology. And regular zoology is just zoology. Crypto is designed basically to refer to it as mysterious zoology. We'll be talking about the things that people in the regular world of zoology would say don't exist. And one of them would be the Loch Ness Monster. Oh. That's basically what the Loch Ness Monster looked like. It's sort of like a humpback, flippers, long tail, and a long neck. And one of the most intriguing theories is that they might be surviving pockets of plesiosaurs, which were marine reptiles that existed at the same time that the dinosaurs were around. So that's one of the most famous cryptids, as they've become known, that are now part of cryptozoology, and certainly just about everybody has heard of the Loch Ness Monster. Another one, of course, probably the most famous in the world, is Bigfoot. And as for Bigfoot, I've done a lot of investigations into the Bigfoot phenomenon throughout the United States, and there's no doubt in my mind at all that there is a genuine mystery to be unsolved. Again, the big question is, what are these animals? Are they some sort of ancient creature that has survived extinction, or are they some sort of North American ape that we just haven't found yet and identified what they might be? But all of these creatures fall into the category of cryptozoology. And another famous one, Mothman of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, which is described as this sort of flying humanoid creature with glowing red eyes. And it's become so famous that back in 2002, Hollywood got into the story, actually made a big bucks Hollywood movie starring Richard Gere called The Mothman Prophecies. And when it comes to these cryptids, they seem to fall into two categories. They're the ones like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster that seem to be flesh and blood animals, but we don't know what they are. And then some of the other ones, like Mothman, are more sort of like ghostly. They don't sort of seem to be real animals in the way we understand it. So the realm, if you like, of cryptozoology does fall into two categories: these stranger animals and the other creatures that might have just survived extinction. Now, when it comes to the whole issue of the Lake Worth goatman, it all began in one particular night in the summer of 1969, when several people, or several friends I should say, were driving around White Rock Lake, and they saw this strange creature bound across the road. And bear in mind, this was sort of 10 or 11 at night. They just got a brief view of this creature, which was described as looking pretty much like us. It was an upright animal with 2 arms and 2 legs. But one of the witnesses described it seemed to having horns coming out of its head, and instead of having feet, it had sort of hoofs like you would see on a cow or on a goat. And that's where one of the portions of the story developed in terms of the name, because it had these goat-like feet. Now, one of the groups was the Reichardt family. They were actually out at White Rock Lake on the night in question, and they were the ones who saw this strange creature. And the first thing they did was actually to run to the local police station. Now, the skeptics have said, well, this is just a story of misidentification or the people hoaxing it. But the reason why I don't think this was a hoax is mainly because the Reichardt family went to the police. I think most people, on a Saturday night would not think it's a good idea to go and hoax the police and waste their time and potentially end up, with a fine or worse, even still. So I think it's important to note that they felt that they'd seen something so weird and so strange that they had to tell the police what they'd seen and what had gone on. And it's intriguing to note that the police actually took the story seriously. And one of the things that actually came out in the story when the police interviewed the family and the friends was that the police had actually got a number of reports that went back 3 months or so before the wave began in the summer of 1969. So we're actually talking about sightings that occurred as far back as March to April 1969. And it was only because when the later stories came out that the police said, well, we've got these earlier cases, and we did think, or did wonder, if it could have actually been just a hoax, just playing a joke, maybe like a gorilla, that kind of thing. And it turned out that was not the case at all, that the police had taken these stories seriously. And through the terms of the Freedom of Information Act, you can actually now ask for the old files, or at least copies of the old files. What you might call like an early X-file, where the police have put the records together on the witness testimony. and they still exist at the Fort Worth Police Department. I don't know to what extent they'll allow you to see them today, but I can say that you can still get them through the Freedom of Information Act if you want to apply to try and get copies of the documents. So that's important because, again, it demonstrates there's a body of evidence. Maybe not photographs, we haven't literally got, a body of a goatman, but we do have this dossier that the police put together, and as I said, it was taken seriously, and it was not just sort of tossed out of the window. Now, Patrolman McGee was the officer who interviewed the family and the other people as well, and he came away very impressed by what the witnesses had to say. And he actually spoke with the media because he felt that this was a genuine story that should be in the public domain. So rather than just keeping it in the police department and not talking about it outside, Patrolman McGee actually spoke with the media and said, yes, these people did come to the police station, we did interview them, I was the interviewer, and I was very impressed by them all. So, although the Goatman story today has taken on, I guess, more entertainment aspects than anything else, but back then, that again with Patrolman McGee's story or his revelations, we do really see how seriously this was taken at that particular time, and the police did not feel that any of the witnesses were wasting anybody's time. It just seemed to be that everybody was completely baffled by it and did not know what to do at all. Now, there are various theories for what the Goatman might be. Probably the strangest of all, even stranger than the Goatman himself, was the idea that it was a bobcat. And that's a nice coloured photograph of a bobcat. My own personal view on this is that it would be extremely difficult to mistake a goatman for a bobcat. To me that just doesn't make any sense at all. But that was one of the theories. Now, the other theory, which could actually have been a genuine one, is the idea that what the family saw was not a goatman, but a Bigfoot. And there's a reason why I mention that, because when the excitement and the hysteria started to develop even more, what actually happened was that a guy named Alan Blaster, who was out at White Rock Lake, took a photograph of what looked like a humanoid figure, but completely white. And it almost looked as if it was covered in sort of cotton balls. It was lumpy and white. Now, if you Google Alan Plaster and Goatman, and you'll see the photograph online that he took back in 1969. And it looks kind of like a Bigfoot, but completely white. Now, what's interesting is that in the world of Bigfoot research, most people, you would probably imagine that Bigfoot looks, dark brown or has black fur. Most of the reports, I would say 97, 98% of all the reports, the witnesses describe seeing Bigfoot having brown hair or black hair, but there is about 1 to 1.5 to 2% of Bigfoot encounters where the witnesses said they saw a white Bigfoot. They said it looked just like the way people describe Bigfoot, but it was completely white. And this has given rise to the theory that there could be like an albino category, if you like, to at least a small percentage of Bigfoot sightings. So I kind of find the Alan Plaster story and the photograph he took of this white Bigfoot type creature, it does make me wonder if they actually saw a Bigfoot, because a lot of people don't realise that reports of Bigfoot are quite widespread in Texas. Now, for the most part, they're bordered towards Louisiana, where it starts to get more forest and swampy land. And there have been a lot of Bigfoot reports in that particular area. But just a few months ago, I got a story of a Bigfoot sighting in woods near Paradise, Texas, which actually isn't too far, really, if you think about it, by car from here. And so, in that sense, I think there is a possibility, you know, we could go with the idea that the goatman and the Bigfoot and the legend of it all may have all sort of come together into one overall legend. It doesn't necessarily mean it is the answer, but I think it could be one potential answer. Now, that's the late Jim Mars, who was probably noted more than anything else for all his research into conspiracies and cover-ups and things like that. Well, I put that up there because Jim, at the time when the goatman was seen, what happened was that he was working on the Fort Worth Journal at the time, and he was actually the first person to write an article in the media about the goatman. And that was the headline that the newspaper went with: "Fishy goatman terrifies couples parked at Lake Worth." Now, the reason for the fishy angle is because several of the witnesses who saw the goatman up close said that although it looked furry, there were parts of its skin where the fur was missing, and underneath, instead of looking like skin, it looked like the scales of a fish, which sort of makes it even more stranger. But that was the sort of the now famous headline that Jim himself wrote, and he wrote the accompanying article with it as well. Now, everybody here today obviously has heard of the goatman of Lake Worth, but we also have several other goatman stories to deal with. One of them is the Denton goatman, which I'm sure all of you know, sort of slightly north of Dallas. And as you can see there, there's sort of a new concrete bridge there, and in front of it you've got what's called the old Alton Bridge.
5 minutes.
What was that?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
We have about 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. We got 5 minutes left.
Then you have a question and answer.
Okay. That's the Denton goatman. As you can see, there's that bridge there, concrete bridge. The one in front of it is called the old Alton Bridge. And there are a lot of stories and legends of a goatman type creature haunting the particular bridge itself. That's another example of it. And if you go out there, very often you'll find on the trees surrounding the bridge itself, kids hang things off the edges of the branches and twigs, like ribbons and things like that. And it kind of looks like a weirdly magical place with all these things hanging off the trees, and you've got this old rusted wooden bridge, and it's also, as I said, it's also developed a legend of a goatman in residence, if you like. And I think so far there are about 14 or 15 sightings of a goatman in that area and around the bridge, going back to 1975, and the most recent one I've got is 2003. I haven't got any more that date after that. And that gives you just a little sign there at the bridge. But if you ever go to Denton, it's not hard to find, and everybody in town, you know, just go into the gas station and say, you know, where do we go to find the goatman? And everybody will point you in the right direction. Now, that's Rob Riggs. Rob was a Bigfoot researcher. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. But he uncovered several stories, again of a goatman type creature that was seen at White Rock Lake in Dallas. So we got like a third location for some of these reports. And the only story that was really, you know, wasn't vague, and it was just, a friend of a friend. There was one story from a woman named Sandy Grace, who claimed that she'd seen a creature like a goatman, humanoid figure, but with goat-like hoofs, and it was just seen very, very briefly bounding through the woods. So that's sort of an overview, if you like, of the first goatman and the second and the third. There may be others. There's certainly reports of goatmen around different parts of the world as well, but those three are the primary ones in Texas. So if anybody's got any questions, we've got time for a few.
So what would be the correlation of timeline for each sighting? Would they correlate in a way that maybe there could be migration of some sort?
Well, that's a good question because a lot of the reports are summer reports. In fact, I can hardly think of like a winter era period when people are seeing these. Now, I guess you could make a case that in the middle of winter, not many people come out here anyway, you know. And so most people, if you're going to see them, you're going to see them in the summer because people are out in the summer. So there might be that aspect to it. But in terms of Bigfoot, people have said, you know, they kind of migrate where food goes. So I think that could be the same, you know, with something like a goatman. If it's a flesh and blood animal and it needs food, it's going to follow the food chain. But yeah, I guess the most relevant thing I can think of is the fact that most sightings are in the summer months.
When you started your talk, you said back in '69 the sightings, was that here at Lake Worth, or was that White Rock Lake and Delta?
Oh no, the 1969 ones were all Lake Worth.
Okay.
Yeah, and the Denton ones was from 75 onwards,
Okay.
and just a handful at White Rock Lake in the early 2000s. So, you know, what they are or how they, you know, they can manoeuvre so close to the cities, that's the, you know, another weird part of the story.
Talking about, excuse me, losing my voice. Thinking about hooves. Any comparison with the goatman to like the Jersey Devil? He also supposedly has hooves and horns.
Yeah, the Jersey Devil, for people who don't know, was this strange creature that was reported a couple of 100 years ago in Jersey, known as the Jersey Devil, because it had these bat-like wings, and it kind of seemed to be like a combination of various animals, but again it had these hoofed feet. And so you could actually put that in kind of the same category. You know, obviously there's no reports from here of the goatman having wings, but the Jersey Devil has these sort of bat-like wings. But, you know, there's definitely a parallel to some degree at least.
When was the last sighting out here?
Well, that's a good question because I know of a few people who've said they've seen something strange out here but didn't really want to go on the record and didn't really want to talk about it too much other than the fact that they'd seen some sort of strange upright creature, you know, perhaps 50 or 75 feet away in the woods. So I wouldn't be, you know, I think it'd be asking for too much for there being two different types of strange creatures in one relatively small area. So I think probably they did see it. Now those more vaguer reports, the most recent one I've got like that is 1996. So, you know, we're talking 20 years ago. But I also know a couple of people who had an encounter, or I think it's 99, but did not want to talk about it at all. So that I kind of makes me think there probably have been other reports, but most people just don't want to report it for fear of being labelled crazy or whatever, you know. So it's always difficult to know how many people have seen these things when a lot of them just don't want to go public. Did you have one?
There's a display in the back over here. I believe it's still going to say 1977 was the last official that it was seen here.
Oh, okay.
I've heard others, but not as official timelines on them.
Yeah, I mean, that's the important thing, you know, official versus people who just don't want to talk about it but might say, well, yeah, I saw something, but I, you know, keep my name out of it, that kind of thing. So we may never really know, you know, based on people's perceptions of should I say something or not.
Yeah, and you said the two Dallas sightings, one from White Rock Lake and the Rob Riggs sighting had hooves, but what about here in the Fort Worth, the Lake Worth? Did they, any of the descriptions, was that having hooves or
Yeah.
horns?
Yeah, Yeah, there weren't many. Most of the descriptions were sort of based on how the figure actually looked. But those who saw it up and close did claim it seemed to have more like puff feet than anything else. But as far as the White Rock Lake ones are concerned, the only ones where the story is really told to any extent is in Rob Riggs's book called Weird Texas, which is still available. I think it's about 20 years old maybe. And he's actually got a picture of a goatman sort of imposed over one of the bridges at White Rock. So, in other words, Rob found this particular White Rock connection. I honestly don't know where he got that connection from. It probably was somebody who read one of his early books that he'd written, and then just decided to contact him. You know, that's how it sometimes happens. But you can definitely find the White Rock story in Weird Texas.
Is that the Reichardt, which you call the Reichardt?
Reichardt.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Reichardt family, they were the ones who really brought the whole thing to the fore when they basically shot out of the lake and went to the police station.
The old Alton Bridge in Denton, I lived in Denton for about 11 or 12 years, and I never did see that bridge. I think I heard a mention of it or something like that, but could you give me just a general description about where it is? And
yeah, well, I forget the actual road that it's on, but if you just Google Denton, Texas, Goatman, there's literally like maybe 15 or 16 stories that different people have written in their blogs or websites. A lot of photographs as well, people have been out there. But it is one of those things that if you don't know the story of the Denton Goatman, you'll never know about it because it's very kind of specific and obscure. And a lot of people don't know about it. But yeah, you can find all those pictures I put up there with the bridge up. They're quite regularly visited by people who are interested in it. But you know, it's like, as I say, if you don't know about it, you wouldn't know where to look for it.
is it north of town or east of town or west of town?
You know, I think it's north. It's north. Yeah, as you go towards Denton, you take a left turn. I forget what the road is now, but it's maybe 5 or 6 minutes off the main highway.
But the north of town.
Yeah.
We appreciate you coming.
All right, thank you.